It's even difficult to agree who sits in which chair. Just 3 chairs. And imagine negotiations.
Mr. President, welcome to the LBJ Library. President Johnson's foreign policy was largely defined by the Cold War. And he left office with an unrealized dream of peace. He would be honored to have you here this evening, and we are honored to have you as well. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Much of our audience tonight, please.
Could I make a peace proposal? The blinding lights here are rather hard on me. So could you turn them down or switch them on? Because I also do not see the faces of people who watch me.
It's a little hot. We were trying to avoid another Cold War. Is that better, Mr. President? Good.
Добрый вечер.
Good evening. Now you can see the audience, Mr. President, and as you may see, much of our audience is made up of students who were not alive when you came to power in 1985. I recall being around their age at that time and the great hope that you engendered in your country, in the Eastern Bloc, and around the world when you embarked on policies of glasnost and perestroika, or openness and restructuring. What led you to pursue those policies when your predecessors had been resistant to openness and reform?
Well, all kinds of things happened in the history of our country. So you cannot just describe it in one phrase that all of them resisted. But so far as I'm concerned, I can tell you that before it happened, and it happened and it began to happen in 1985, but before it happened, before I was elected General Secretary, it probably could not have started. It probably could not have happened. So some people ask, why is it that when you came in, you didn't have a specific program? And I said, had we started by developing a program, then probably we would not have been able to even publish that program. With the ideas that we had, we probably would have ended up in the Far East, in some camps in the Far East. So it's not so easy. It wasn't so easy to arrive at the possibility of really changing the country. This was a difficult road, but it was an amazingly interesting and exciting experience. Out of 80 years of my life, for 55 years, I've been in politics, involved in politics. And it took that long road and all that I saw, all that I had seen, all that I had experienced, so to say, with my own skin. And the presence, the work in politics, particularly during the final years that preceded my arrival, my leadership in the Central Committee, opened my eyes to many things. It did open my eyes. Certainly the really good information was available to not to many people. It was the members of the Central Committee, the deputies of the Supreme Soviet.
Началась с информации.
Information, of course, is all important.
Поэтому не зря
And,
первым шагом было
by the way, it is not an accident that my first step
гласность.
was glasnost.
Гласность.
Glasnost.
Это убийственное для было всех.
This was something that
Вел нечестную жизнь,
came as a shock to those who
что вообще
were not
годами и
living
десятилетиями
honestly, who had been for decades, for
использовал
years,
страну просто.
using the country for their own purposes.
Вот надо, чтобы было, пришло к руководству.
So it took a new generation of leaders to start change.
Поэтому, если вы помните,
You may
самыми
recall
первыми шагами были
that our very first steps
половина бывших членов Политбюро
Included.
отправлены на пенсию.
the resignation, the retirement of about half of the former members of the Politburo.
А некоторые из них, такие как Громыко,
Some of them, such as Andrei Gromyko,
почти с 30-летним стажем министра
who had been foreign minister for almost 30 years,
он присоединился ко мне.
joined with me.
И это было очень важно,
And it was very
потому
important
чтобы дальше
to have him on
создавать
our side
команду единомышленников.
in order to continue to build a team of like-minded people.
Я сейчас закончил книгу, еще одну.
I have recently finished another book that I've written.
Она отличается от предшествующих книг
It is different from my previous books
одним.
in one respect.
Остальное перекликается.
Of course, there are some parallels, but it's different in that
Побольше деталей.
there is more detail there
И в моей жизни
about my life,
там много.
a lot of detail about my life.
Но я ее посвящаю.
I
Книгу,
dedicated that book to my wife, Raisa,
и она называется «Наедине с собой».
and it is called Alone with Myself.
Конечно, мне трудно далась эта книга,
It was a difficult experience to write that book,
но там много фактов интересных.
but there are many interesting facts there.
Так вот, один из фактов
One of those facts
в день,
is that on the
когда
day
скончался
when
мой предшественник,
my predecessor in the post
Черненко,
of the General Secretary, Chernenko, died,
я немедленно назначил на 11 часов ночи
I
заседание Политбюро.
appointed on that same night, 11 p.m., a meeting of the Politburo.
Вопрос о власти надо решать
It was important
быстро.
to decide quickly who will be in charge.
Я счел необходимым в этот
And
момент
I decided
встретиться и поговорить
before that meeting to meet and have a talk with Gromyko.
за 20 минут до начала заседания Политбюро.
20 minutes before the beginning of the Politburo meeting, we talked.
Вот было 5 минут.
We had just 5
Я
minutes.
всегда после этого думаю, можно и за часы разговора.
And I often think that sometimes it takes days and maybe hours of conversation that is totally meatless and that doesn't produce anything. Here, 5 minutes was very important. I said to him that, of course, what happened was not unexpected. My predecessor was seriously ill, and so it had to happen. But, I said,
И я, и вы знаем,
both of
что в
us
стране
know very well
очень большое недовольство
that
тем,
there is a lot of discontent in the country, a lot of unhappiness among the
что
people.
правят они очень
For decades, we've been ruled by old people
пассивны
who are very
в
passive,
на жизнь.
who do not care really about what's happening.
И люди требуют перемен.
And also people demand change. People want change.